Dave Wazner is kind of acting like my consigliere tonight, I guess. How do? Let's chat a little bit. Who here's new, like brand new? Beautiful. Love to see it. Hopefully you guys got a chance to check out Ben's awesome beginner talk. Round of applause for Ben. More enthusiastic applause. I like it. And tell your friends. We're trying to make sure that we always have beginner content in the meetups a little bit before the advertised start time. So 5:30 or so, we always want to have something available for people who are getting started with it, tutorial, that kind of thing. Let's raise your hand if you're on the leadership team for this meetup. Cool. So if you have questions about meetup, the framework, anything like that, come see one of us. And let's do jobs. Who is looking for work right now? Cool. Would you like to tell a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I went to Galvanize program last year and did 6 months there, and then I was immediately hired on contract work with Ember, a small consulting company. Then after about 3 months of doing that, they hired me on full-time as salary. So I've been there for a total of 7 months, and they're seeing a downturn in their clients' work. So I won't have that much to do in the next few months, so I don't have that much opportunity to grow. So I'm looking for, new. Preferably, I would like to focus on the front end. So that's why I'm here to learn about Ember.
Outstanding. And her name is?
Crystal O'Mara.
Outstanding. Who else? Anyone? Most employed software developers? Cool. Anybody here who has work?
Ibotta is looking for Rails engineers, platform engineers. We are also looking for Android developers and iOS developers. So if you know anybody that's still on that, let me know. Or Ben, or Heather, or Gabe. Do you know what levels? The platform we're looking at junior to senior, the whole gamut. We look more medium, mid-range, junior trials.
Beautiful.
Work with Group X on Demand. We're currently looking for someone to help build out the panel for the client admin panel on the Ghost blog. Those are live stats to our clients. So, yeah. Interest in working with databases and setting up some back-end stuff.
Cool. Anybody else offering or looking? Going once, going twice. Sweet. Let's just a couple quick pitches for things outside the Ember community. Who here is a member of Ember Devs? Okay, most folks. If your hand did not go up, you should go to join.emberdevs.com and join the most vibrant developer community you've ever seen. We are 1,300, I think, and growing. We talk everything. Talk about everything from Pokemon Go to jobs to Java E. Like whatever you want, there's probably a channel for it. There's an awful lot of channels. And I have officially changed my title to full Slack developer because I spend most of my let's see what else. Digabit, yeah. Anybody from Digabit? Yes. Pitch.
Usually we're hiring, but we're not. So when some of you go to school or just for the job, you will be hiring.
And they provide delicious food and beer.
Best meetup food ever.
Consistently the best meetup food ever. I would also like to thank our wonderful hosts, Ibotta. Ben, would you like to talk about the company a little bit?
Sure, we're a cashback mobile app. We are trying to be the sort of destination anytime you go shopping. So download our mobile app, ibotta.com. The first time you use it, we'll give you $10 just for trying it. But basically, you go to a store, whether that be a grocery store, retail place in the mall, something like that. purchase a product we're running a rebate on, and we deposit cash right into your account. I've earned $300 since I've worked here for about 3 years. So check it out. We're testing mobile apps, so think 5% cash back on Drizzly, that kind of thing. Grocery stores, places in the mall. It's ibotta.com/register or ibotta.com/get the app.
There you just scan your receipt after you already purchase things,
Yep.
and you guys do all the other stuff.
Exactly.
Badass. Shout out to sponsors emeritus, Zero. They're a consultancy so good they keep changing their name so you won't find out about them. But if you're looking for Ember consultants,
Talk to Frank.
talk to Frankie.
Whatever they're called.
As well, I would like to mention if you're looking for an Ember consultant, would you like to pitch?
I do Ember consultancy, back as well. Fairly small at the moment as well. I'm not hiring at the moment, so I work. So
Badass.
if you bring me work, I'm interested in hiring people.
And he's too modest to mention it, but Mr. Baker here is a member of the Docs team, the official Docs team for Ember. And would you like to talk about Open Source Night?
We do open source night, a couple months, every couple months, every night. Back on Ember, other things, if you're interested in back to Ember, or you want to work on something else, post on
Awesome. What did you guys work on the last one? Who was there? Anyone?
I'm trying to remember.
All right, Steve, what did you guys work on?
PR accepted that adds plus and minus markers on the code snippets on the Ember guides. So marking like this, so like added it's practical.
Awesome.
I got it.
Anything else at that meetup? Cool.
That's kind of a good thing to do if you want to talk to you over
Very different from this meetup. This meetup is generally socializing and speaker focused. That meetup is more socializing and work focused. Especially good if you're curious about how open source works. You can get, what's Scott? You can get exposure to the open source community. Like we've had many people, there's galvanized students who are maybe 3 weeks into being programmers. We got PRs accepted that night. There's a phenomenal amount of work to be done in open source. And like, however much you know, you can start contributing. Or you just hang out talking a little bit. But we try to do those in alternating 2 weeks from this meetup. Absolutely. We would do it every week if there's like people interested in it. So please step up. They're a super good time.
We're also looking for folks who are willing to do lightning talks or speak at this meetup. So we'll do a couple of lightning talks. We're trying it out. There are 2 of us tonight doing it, but if you want to talk about something that you learned, if you're experienced in Ember, whatever, we're looking for speakers. So let me know. Even if you have an inkling that you're interested in it, talk to me. We can probably figure out something that you can talk about.
Amen. Some of my favorite talks that have happened at this meetup come from people that just started with it. And so it's not necessarily just for experts. If you think that this might be for you, please come talk to us. If you are an expert, and by expert I mean you do Ember for money, or you have like been using Ember for more than 3 or 4 months. Also, like, get over your imposter syndrome. Get up here. Run time. Let's get in the weeds. Because like this is we were actually just talking about this in Ember Devs today. One of the hardest parts about scheduling meetup talks is that when you get to more advanced talks, people either think, "Oh, that's just for experts." I'm not an expert. Yeah, you are. And like as far as like this kind of stuff goes, like you're probably more expert than you think. People want to hear from you. And so we want a good blend of all these different kinds of content in this meetup. So if you think you have something that might be quite there, we have an awful lot of people here who want to help you have that. Other stuff. Let's talk about Ember News a little bit. I apologize for not doing my homework on this ahead of time. Also, apologize for being kind of shit-faced now. I've spent a week at sea level, and so coming back up to a mile high, these 2 beers have gotten me pretty quick. So what's been happening in Ember News in the last month?
7.
What's new in 2.7?
There was a couple of, there was a computed macro and another similar function added to arrays called by, which was basically just a logical gap that they realized that in all their macros. So that was, I think, the only thing.
Also data. Because I saw the data also go to 2.7, right?
Yeah, and CLI as well. So.
Anything new in those that we're aware of?
Data templates for new models switched back from.
Oh, the blueprint for CLI,
Yeah,
right?
the blueprint, sorry, the blueprint switched back to what was forward, so for ES, and then destructure that.
Good, because I was not super happy with that syntax.
I'm going to talk about that.
Related to the talk that Dennis gave at the last one, all the hooks needed for the Ember engines are going to make it into 2.8. So the next long-term support release is going to have all the support for Ember engines that Dennis talked about last time.
Oh yeah.
Do you know what 2.8?
6 weeks.
It'll be 6 weeks. Yep. 7 just came out this week.
Approximately.
6 weeks-ish. Yeah.
Any other hot Ember news?
Find out that search on the Ember site. So
Outstanding. It has not worked super well so far.
Is that the
it's not
SEO?
Google search, that's coming, but actual when you're on the site search.
Unanimous?
Dream big.
Other Ember news. I want to throw this out there. Again, not super Ember related, but you're a developer and you're not going to develop Denver next week. You are missing out. Thursday and Friday, it's up to all of $100, I think, maybe $110 in tickets for a 2-day conference of the movers and shakers in this community, hanging out, talking code, and a little biased. I'm giving a talk Thursday night on Agile, and but it is one of the best times I think you can have in the Denver developer community. And I don't know who's going. Who has tickets already? More of you should have your hands up. So that's my pitch on that. Let's see, anything else before we get started?
Lightning talks.
Lightning talks. So let's get to it, gang. And give a big round of applause for your first speaker. Yeah!
Okay, cool. So our setup is super weird, so my computer does have to be over there. But I'm going to be talking about fun with new Ember 2.x features. Which basically, what I've noticed about how Ember has changed since 1.0. Used to be that templates had to be really, really dumb. Like templates, your controllers or your component JavaScript had to do basically everything. And we have a lot more power with closure actions and composability to be able to do a lot more cool stuff with our templates. So, I had an issue recently where the designer on my team, this happens occasionally, it'll come back on. The designer on my team wanted to do something that wasn't just like a standard confirm dialog. It's basically an action that we really wanted to make sure that the end user wanted to do. It was like losing some data. We really wanted to make sure that they didn't hit it on mistake. So this is something that you would probably use quite a bit, just a standard confirm alert, but it doesn't look as nice as something like this. So this is within the actual application itself, but it's preventing the transition from happening, the delete of some data. So I'm going to talk through how we ended up implementing this. So I called this full screen confirm. So in this quick lightning talk, we're going to talk through Ember wormhole, composable helpers, and yielded actions. What? If that was a lot, don't worry, we're going to step through all of it. So first of all, Ember wormhole. So this is the sort of one sentence on GitHub. It's to render a child view somewhere else in the DOM, which can be extremely helpful because especially with a modal dialog or something that you want to take up the entire viewport or even render outside of your component, Ember doesn't have anything kind of built in to do something like that. So if you think about what is rendered for your in your main HTML, you kind of have an Ember div right within your body that is your entire Ember application. But maybe I want to put something up here where it says somewhere else, like maybe anything that's rendered into that somewhere else div takes up the entire viewport. This is where Ember wormhole comes in. So composable helpers. Composable helpers for declarative templating in Ember. Okay, that's their one sentence. But it does cool stuff like this. So it provides things like this pipe helper that are pretty handy. So each of these things, add to cart, purchase, redirect to thank you page, are all actions within this example application. And you can think of it like a pipeline of actions that can abort at any point. So maybe when you click on this buy stuff button, first we add it to cart, and then maybe somebody purchases it, and if they do purchase that item, then we send them to the thank you page. But at any point, if they bail out, these helpers help us to stop. So maybe they add to cart, but they decide not to purchase. We can abort out of that action without continuing on. Yielded actions. So this is pretty handy when you have components, inner components that need to send data up to the parent component. So user list, for instance, each user's as user, so iterating over an array of users and just yielding each user. If we had a parent component, we could do user list, users equals user as user. So this is the yielded component here. And then maybe we just pass that through to a user card that maybe has a profile and information about that person. So you can actually yield data back up out of your component. So what we're going to build is a quick full screen confirm like I showed earlier. So this is our component. So we're going to yield an action that the consumer can use to fire showing the modal. So upon clicking a button that we want the user to confirm, maybe it's like delete this item out of the cart. We want to make sure that they want to do that. We're going to do that with this show modal action. And then within this entire if block up here, the if show modal, we use Ember wormhole to render something into a full screen modal container. And we'll have some contents in here like, are you sure, a cancel, a confirm, with a never mind or do it button. So this is the corresponding JavaScript to this component. So we'll start off with show modal false. Obviously, we don't want it to show right away. And we'll be dealing with a confirm promise. And this is how we'll make that pipe helper either abort out of doing the thing we want them to confirm or not. So in show modal, ignore skip confirm, sorry I meant to take that out. But we'll create a deferred promise. How many of you guys have used a deferred promise or are familiar with how it works? Okay, a few of you. So basically a deferred promise is a promise that is pending until you do something with it. So I can create this deferred promise here and set it to my component and show the modal. So until I call deferred promise.resolve or deferred promise.reject, that thing will just sit there pending. It'll hold the promise open. So when we show the modal, we'll set the flag to true to render it into the wormhole, and we'll save off this promise that we'll use to either confirm or cancel the action. So down here we have our confirm. So we'll grab our deferred promise. If they click the yes, I do want to delete this thing from my cart, we'll resolve that promise and hide the modal and reset everything here in those set properties. Or if they cancel, we'll grab the promise and we'll reject it, not show the modal, and then down there it's confirm promise null again. So that's what we were just looking at was our full screen confirm component. So this is how I might use it in a consuming template. So I use my full screen confirm component, and I handle my action. So then I'm rendering a button, and it does something scary, like removing an item from a cart, deleting your account, something like that. And we use the pipe action that we used before. So if the user confirms, I want to complete the delete, do something scary. But if this rejects, pipe will actually stop this action from running. So it's like nothing happened. So we'll look at a demo real quick.
So I know these are lightning type of
Yeah.
products, but can I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
What is that? So where do we get pipe again from?
So pipe is from Ember Composable Helpers. It's an add-on written by Dockyard. But you could, like if you look at the code of this, it's really, really straightforward with closure actions, because a closure action is passed to the result of that action is passed to the next action. So all this pipe is doing is basically saying, take this action. If it's a promise and it's rejected, don't call the next thing. So really, really straightforward. You could write this in pure Ember pretty easily. But pipe provides like the nice syntax, and you don't have to write it yourself. So we'll look at a demo real quick. So this is available on GitHub. I'll post these slides and stuff, but you can take a look at a working demo that's tested and all that. So here's my something scary button. So when I clicked that, it created a deferred promise. And so now that deferred promise is sitting here and waiting. So just like if I was requesting something from a server and I haven't gotten any response back, it's just sitting there pending, waiting for something to happen with the promise until I do something with either of these buttons. So if I click on nevermind, it's going to call deferred promise.reject, and that following action, which is something scary, doesn't actually happen. But if I click this again, we have a pending promise. I click on do it, then it'll call something else, which in this case just flips a flag in my template and shows this image instead of that. So again, this is a cool way that you can use composability to do more in your templates. So previously what we would have had to do is grab this action. We couldn't even do that because we didn't have closure actions. Fire an action, wait for something to happen, check the result of that promise, do something else. So closure actions and composability within templates allows us to do really cool stuff like this, like the add to cart, confirm purchase, redirect to thank you page in very, very little code, but use composability to sort of help us do cool stuff. So again, I'll post these slides. All the source code is here. There's a whole set of like 10 tests on this thing. It's really cool. So yeah, happy to take any questions. We have about 2 minutes.
So how many add-ons total?
How many add-ons am I using in this?
Yeah.
Ember Wormhole. I'm using Foundation because I was lazy on the styling. So Foundation, Ember Wormhole, Ember Composable Helpers. I'm I'm using Ember CLI Mocha because I hate QUnit for testing. So like 4 or 5. 4 or 5. And it's really easy. Like I put this demo together in about 20 minutes. Anybody else have questions? So Composable Helpers has a ton of really cool other stuff in addition to pipe. They have a ton of really great things that you can use with arrays in your templates. So for instance, things like map by filter, intersect, union, take, which is like out of my users, take the first 5 and only show them out of the array. They have cool stuff like an equivalent of like %W in Ruby to like break an array of strings out into a real array and you can iterate over them. There's a ton of really great stuff in here, and all of these can be put together. So you could do like, let's see. So you can do something like sort by last name first and then first name second, but only active users can take the first 5. So this one line is doing a ton, and it's all just held in your component declaration, which is great. So you're not like, grab this array, and then a computer property that sorts it, and then but make sure they're active first, and then slice it 0 to 4. Grab the first 5. It's pretty handy that you can put all of this in. Yeah.
There's a part where I saw it, I think you called it the wormhole.
Yeah.
It said 2 full screen.
Yep. It's
How does that work?
Yep.
Is that like just something they define?
So what I did was in my main template here, I actually defined above my entire Ember, above my entire Ember application, which is actually rendered here. I actually am just defining this, and then I have some styling around that makes it full screen.
Can you talk a little bit?
So it's absolutely positioned. It takes up the entire viewport. It has a higher Z index and everything else. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about Ember Wormhole?
Yes.
How it works?
Sure. So Ember Wormhole is, all it does is it takes a component definition like so this is, again, my full screen confirmed component. And all this thing is doing is basically yielding an action that it uses in the consumer, which is what I was using to pipe. So it's basically like, this action will resolve if, yes, I do want to do the thing that I'm confirming, or it will reject. So that's all this is really doing. And then inside this giant if block, this Ember Wormhole, this basically just says, instead of rendering this wherever this component is placed in the DOM, render it somewhere else. So think about modals, maybe like popovers. So I click on this list, and then suddenly this little anchored pop-up comes over and I filter based on it or something like that. It allows you to logically define it within the template, but render it somewhere else in the DOM. So like popovers, modals are the 2 obvious examples. You could definitely shoot yourself in the foot a lot with this, because you can just kind of YOLO, put it wherever you want. But the nice part is, because it's a part of this component, it will get destroyed when this component is destroyed. So if I had, for instance, so this shows a full screen modal on a page where I have like a delete from my cart or something. As soon as that button goes away, even though this full screen div is still there and I can still render to it, it's controlled by the actual button that is rendered in a subcomponent somewhere else on a different route. So it's a nice way to have it still controlled by the component lifecycle of the component that is logically triggering it, or rendering it outside of where that component is rendered.
Can you show us how this component is invoked again?
Yeah, exactly. Definitely. Something scary.handlebars. Scary button.handlebars. so this is, again, this is where we're rendering that component. Again, all it's really doing is has the wormhole that renders the modal somewhere else and is yielding this action. So this is my button. Oh, this is another add-on. It's pretty cool to look at it. But anyway, so I have a button that just says something scary, which, oh my God, I hate that my laptop is over here. So here I have my something scary button, which is rendered by this. So if should show scary, that's where that like stupid GIF comes up. Otherwise, this is the button. It's limited by that, unfortunately. It's not the same. Sorry. I would really be over there if I could. So anyway, I'm yielding that action. So I'm invoking it here. So this the yield show modal action is being yielded up with this. And so this is the promise that rejects or confirms based on the wormhole modal I'm rendering. And then if this resolves and does not reject, do something scary fires, which basically just flips this flag, should show scary. Which actually would have been better if I would have used the mutable helper, because then I wouldn't have had a component definition at all. But anyway. Yeah. So yeah, you sure? Do it. Cool. It flipped the flag. There it is. If you guys want to see more of it, it's all available on GitHub. I'll post the slides. But yeah, thank you guys.
So every time you start like doing that thing, you're like, well, this is the index one. What about 1,000? What about 9,000? And you're like, it's like,
So,
why am I doing this?
Did you like see things grow? I couldn't believe that working.
I read a bunch of books over the week, but one of the most like eye-opening ones was CSS Secrets. Super popular book. Highly recommend you read it. This is the CSS book to read right now. For people who are all like, it's not learning CSS. It's explaining modern CSS by Eric Meyer. They wrote the reset that all of us use. It's and my favorite part of it is he opens by explaining how the CSS standards body works. It's like there is no such thing as CSS 3. Like that's a lie that you've been told by marketers. Like here's how it actually works, and that actually ends up becoming really relevant throughout the book. For wondering how border clip like actually works for any of this shit, highly recommend reading this book. It's not just a list of tricks. I thought it was. Wasn't happy with, and it really is an explanation of modern CSS. Also, I read Drive, or not Drive. That's the name of the book. I read Sprint, the Design Sprint book from Google Ventures. Also, a 2 thumbs up read on how to answer questions. David, are you going to go?
Almost. Yeah.
Almost. All right. Was it CSS Secrets by Eric Meyer? So other stuff that I read was Scrum Shortcuts. That one. This is similar to CSS Secrets. If you're already really good like lists of like temperature checks on like whether you're doing correct, like in Scrum in particular, what the meaning behind a lot of rituals is, and like if the rituals is working for you, how you might be able to adapt to your organization.
Did you say shortcuts?
Scrum Shortcuts is the name of the book. Scrum Shortcuts without cutting corners.
Without cutting corners.
Yep, that's the name of the book. That was a terrific read in preparation for my awesome document called Never Next Week. Good to go? All right, ladies and gentlemen, Nick Baker. That's all right.
As far as I asked you to talk about some just regular blueprints that happened starting in Ember 2.3, I believe it was. That first thing. 5 years. So this is an old import of Ember data, Ember data model, and we released Ember CLI 2.3. All of a sudden, learning started getting going. How do I get things to work? These were broken. Guys were broken because we didn't know that this had happened. So we scrambled a bit. To a different look. Let's see. Shifted to this type of import. Apparently, this wasn't planned by many people. So recently, Ember 2.7 was reverted. Ember 14 is going. This is a public API change that we weren't consulted on. We don't like it. Should have asked. Wasn't intentional, but the Ember data team like merged at one point and it happened for all of this. The background to this is blueprints have historically lived under Ember CLI, but they're starting to be shifted into various add-ons. Ember data and Ember
henceforth has been powered items have been pulled in. Those are being shifted into NPM add-ons. As part of the shift in add-ons, those varying Ember and Ember data are starting to be moved. They can have blueprints because they're now Ember CLI add-ons as opposed to fully developed. So there's more control over Ember CLI blueprints being evolved down to the very bottom of these add-ons. So the Ember data guys had newfound power. We didn't quite realize merge is going to break the world for everyone else. So that's the background to what happened. We can go back to the regular import model from Ember data, like we import ES from Ember data, like we used to do. That was discussed without quite as much background. Here, which is the not sorry in here. I wondered about asking to put that in as part of the blog post, but in essence, whoops, we made a mistake. In essence, shows that we're all human working on this stuff. So please send PRs in and notice what it's because everyone's working on this. Another version of whoops, which we're in the midst of working on, probably won't have affected you guys as much unless you're doing new Ember apps. Let's see.
New application template.
Right. I helped with that. I didn't realize we were breaking the world. My goal, back up here a minute, in all this was to build this, which is a little nicer than what we used to have. In the midst of making this change to welcome people into the Ember world, the Ember CLI team wanted to remove the application because it's a headache for all of us as we upgrade everything. And there's always a merge on application to PS5. So the goal was, let's remove it as part of this, and that wasn't thought through quite as carefully as we wanted. So there's been a few inquiries about it. That's going to get resolved because of that. But in context, as we talked about making this page and changes it, there were 8 Ember core developers who looked at various pieces, and yet we missed them. And only a few people look at the final piece as far as applications. Yes, validating them, but people are human. Like Ben said, LTSs are a little safer than the regular releases because the regular releases sometimes have little bugs. So either help with the checking the data or stick to the LTSs. We'll have bugs there too, but they will be fixed. This will get fixed too, but Ember 2.7 is Ember 2.6 and Ember 2.7 don't have an application SPS file. It's part of the group. 2.7.1 probably will. So that's the short version. The core team and everyone else working around it are working. This should have been an RFC. Now that we look at it now, it wasn't. So there's about 3 or 4 pull requests that I discussed with various people that didn't get looked at by the whole world. So it's a shift from not having RFCs to having RFCs. Sorry. Let me know if you notice something that I might have broken. I think that should do it.
All right, we did it. All right, so last line in All right. Oh, y'all ready for your headliners? Apparently not. What I'm looking for. Let's have a big. I learned it from consultants and experience and blog posts, and like a lot of like kind of mishmashy sort of things. And like it's like, well, what's the book that I can recommend? My hands down favorite one so far has been the O'Reilly book. I think it's called Learning Agile, something like that. You know, books. What's that?
I have to switch.
Which O'Reilly? Bill O'Reilly? No. Tim O'Reilly, very different person.
About as polar opposite of the other.
Like, kind of so. But Tim O'Reilly runs O'Reilly Publishing, who makes all those books with the white backgrounds and then the blue text and the weird black and white picture of an animal on it. Those are the O'Reilly books. I think it's called Learning Agile. I'll send that to you. That one is my favorite so far because it talks about Agile theory in general. It talks about Scrum and XP in particular. It also incorporates Lean, which isn't an Agile thing. Lean predates Agile by many dozens of years, but is very much a part of that kind of family and acknowledges that in kind of a big way. So I'll send out the link. If you're curious about learning about Agile, please read that book. If there's one Agile book you read, it's that one. And are you good to go? All right. Awesome. Hey!
So, like you said, my name is Austin Burdine, and I'm going to be talking about Ember, just some generic ways in which you can optimize your Ember app. It's hopefully not going to seem too disjointed. There's 3 different sections that I'm going to kind of talk about. But first, who am I? I am a sophomore computer science student at Olivet Nazarene. I'm a core team member at Ghost, which is a blogging platform that uses a Node.js backend and an Ember.js admin client. And I also, at school, I work at the library and I do Ember front end and PHP backend there. So I've been doing Ember for a number of years. So the 3 sections I'm going to be talking about are lazy loading and file size optimizations. And then I'm going to be talking about an add-on called Ember Concurrency, which is an add-on that can help you improve the way you handle promises in your application. And the third thing I'm going to be talking about is Ember Exam, which is a way you can run your tests better so that you can figure out interdependencies in your tests and just improve your testing overall. So first is lazy loading. So kind of the backstory behind this is Ghost has a lot of third-party things that we incorporate because there's a lot of different moving parts to the admin client. And because of that, our vendor.js file got really large. An uncompressed file was, I think, 7 megabytes, and the compressed was almost 2, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're rendering it and loading it on, for a lot of people, it was getting a lot slower, and there were a lot of things that weren't getting used a lot. So the biggest example was Code Mirror. We have in a certain section of our application, I can actually show it. We have a thing in Ghost that lets you inject code into the header and footer of your blog. In the entire admin tool that uses Code Mirror. And so for a lot of people who didn't use this, it was unnecessary. So you can see there, there's those 2 Code Mirror instances, but that's the only place in the application where it was getting used. And so incorporating that into our vendor.js file was kind of unnecessary because most people didn't even use it. And so we looked at getting a way to shrink down our file size while still being able to use the power that Code Mirror offers. And actually, this is going to end up being moot, this talk, at some point because Ember is working on incorporating lazy loading of engines, but also third-party, just generic dependencies into applications. So in the future, this won't necessarily be
needed, but for now, there I developed a kind of an easy way to lazy load a third-party dependency into your Ember application only where it's needed. And I can show, here's kind of my dummy application here. So basically you see that there is an editor, and I need to rebuild my application, but basically there's another Ember add-on called Ember CLI Node Assets. Yeah. So there's an Ember add-on that we use called Ember CLI Node Assets, and basically what it lets you do is it lets you move some of your dependencies that are Bower only that you would normally import using app.import in your Ember CLI build. So like down here, I imported normalize. So that's how you would do it with Bower, but unfortunately, because of the way Ember CLI works, you can't do that with generically with node modules. So node assets, what it lets you do is define the NPM dependencies that you want to import, just to kind of move away a lot of those from Bower. And so this kind of leverages that. So this hash here kind of defines what node assets you want to load. And then up here, I've defined the files that we want to import. So we have the basic CodeMirror CSS, the theme, and then all of the different modes that we want for CodeMirror. And those are all the files that we need to render that editor. And so down here, it requires a little bit of broccoli manipulation and understanding kind of how that works. But really all it does is concatenates the files together and pushes it into two different files in your assets. So you have your vendor.js and your vendor CSS and your app.js, app CSS. We also have CodeMirror.js and CodeMirror CSS, which are loaded, which are lazy loaded. And the way that is done is through a lazy loader service. So basically, it's super simple. It leverages Ember Ajax, and all it does is it will request that URL, and you give it, when you're loading it, you give it a URL. It will request that and it'll cache it, so it only loads it once. And then it saves it so that you don't end up calling the script multiple times on page renders. And it also handles loading of CSS styles, and that's a lot more simple. All you have to do is add that link tag to your head. But in this component here, this CodeMirror editor, I've got I call that load style, so it loads this CodeMirror CSS and the CodeMirror JS, and then initializes the editor, which ends up with an ultimate product of, should be looking. Sorry.
So while that's loading, because you're doing that in the data entry element book, does it flash the editor, and then as soon as that comes up, like it's not blocking the transition, you have to do that in the...
No, it's not blocking the transition because all the CodeMirror editor is just a text area. And so it would show, potentially it would show a blank text area for a second while it loaded. And there we go, actually. So it loaded just the editor on the page that it was needed, and we can do stuff like type in HTML. So and it shrinks down your vendor size considerably. In this other tab, I have kind of a difference here, and I'll zoom in on that. So here's what it looks like without the built file, without the extraction. So as vendor.js uncompressed is 3.1 megs, and the app is generally about the same. But then up here, it pulls out that almost 500 kilobyte JS dependency out of that vendor.js, allowing you to shrink your render.js file, loading your page faster, and ultimately just having a faster app. And another thing you can do to shrink file sizes, one of the things we did is we depended on jQuery UI for a couple of places in our app. And lazy loading didn't really work because of how jQuery UI was loaded. But what we did do is there's jQuery UI comes in a built, like all of the components of jQuery UI in one file. But what we did is we went and looked at each of the individual components that we needed. So there was only like 2 or 3. And we just pulled out the ones that we needed and loaded those. And that actually shrunk our file size by about another 0.5 meg uncompressed. And so that ultimately has resulted in performance improvements. And I think, especially for big Ember add-ons, it can help a lot, or big Ember apps, it can help a lot. But like as I said, because Ember is working on kind of a generic solution for this to go along with engines, at some point this won't be necessary. But if you're looking for a way to lazy load certain third-party assets in the meantime, there's a pretty simple way to do it with that. Any questions about lazy loading? No? Okay. So now I'm going to move on to Ember concurrency. And so basically, Ember concurrency is an Ember add-on that provides a better way of handling promises in your application. And that sounds super generic, but for example, if you have a promise that you don't want to run multiple times in a row, so if they click a button, you don't want them to be calling the server a bunch of different times if they keep on clicking the button. And you can do that with like disabling the button, showing a loading spinner. You can do that a variety of different ways. But you also might want to provide an extra step there to make sure that they don't keep hitting the server, especially if there's different places that call the same promise. And so to kind of give an example of that, the way that Ember concurrency works is it's got a task. It groups things into what are called tasks. And basically, those are just encapsulate a specific promise. And they also use what's called the generator function syntax. And that looks mostly like a regular function, except you have an asterisk there, and you use what's called a yield keyword. And if you're familiar with the new async await proposal that's currently undergoing review, this is kind of similar to that. It allows you to work with promises synchronously. So it looks like they are running synchronously, but it's actually handling the promises behind the scenes. So if you see here, it's got a task, and then it does this time, and then it uses a timeout. So basically, it's a way to handle those synchronously. And because it's synchronous, you can wrap those yield calls in a regular try-catch block instead of doing like a promise.then.catch like you would normally do. But that's not all that's cool about it. There's also different helpers that you can use. So they've got 4 extra ones. So there's restartable, enqueue, drop, and keep latest. And those all have different ways of handling the promises if they're called multiple times, or the tasks if they're called multiple times. So, so by default, they run concurrently. So if you just keep clicking task.perform, it will just keep running all of these until they're all done. But you can also do restartable to where only one instance of a task is running at once. So if I just keep clicking this, it cancels all of those previous promises and makes sure only one is running at a time. And one of the examples is debouncing. So you can use run.debounce, but this is actually kind of a cleaner way to do that, especially if you're running a different task within that debounce. So you use that yield timeout to wait for a certain amount of time, but then you use restartable. So that way, if it's not gone through that timeout of however long it is, it will restart the promise and wait until you haven't clicked it for, or haven't called it for a certain amount of time before executing whatever's after that timeout. In queue, it basically works by saying that if you keep calling this promise, I'm just going to wait until the first one's resolved, then call the next one, then call the next one until there's not any more promises to run. So those will all wait until the first one's done, and they all run one after the other. Drop kind of means that any tasks that are called after the first one are just not called. So they're just ignored until the first one's done. And keep latest is essentially the reverse of that. So it will only keep the most immediate one going. Or it's kind of a combination of in queue and restartable. No, in queue and the default one. So it will wait until the first one's done, but it will only keep one waiting in the queue. And so basically, you can combine those to simplify and reduce the amount of times that your server gets called. For example, in Ghost, we have in a post, we have some rules on when a slug is generated for a post. And that can happen through multiple different ways. If you're typing the post name after 700 milliseconds, so a debounce, it would call that slug generation. But also when you're saving it for the first time, it also wants to call that slug generation. And so the challenge is having to keep a reference. Before this, we had to keep a reference to the promise to make sure that we could cancel it. If the debounce was running and we were saving, we didn't want to run the first call and the second call at the same time. So using this, that's another important thing about these is that they're cancelable. So tasks, for a task, you can cancel all of the tasks at once by calling like task.cancelAll. Or if you, each time you perform a task, it gives you an instance and you can call cancel on that, providing a little more fine-grained control. And there's also, it also gives you a helper to perform a task in the template, which also helps with that. Any questions about Ember concurrency? Yeah.
So right now, we've got basically kind of like a timeline thing. It goes out and queries an AJAX service. Would this be something that would be, and we're currently using the set timeout to basically go and query. Would this be an excellent application for that kind of a process?
So is it like a thing that happens every number of seconds, or is it like more like a debounce?
So right now it's every second, mostly because it doesn't change very often. Users aren't going to know any better. And that's one of the things that I wanted to do. But what I'm concerned about is because of the way I'm doing it with promises, I'm afraid that they'll like change screens or change displays, and it won't unregister timeout for whatever reason, and come back on and try and do the timeout again.
Yeah, so this, it doesn't handle repeated runs, so like a set timeout so that it keeps running every like second or so.
Okay.
There may be a way to do it, but I haven't figured out exactly how to do that. But that actually brings up an important point about this too, is if you have a task in a component of, for example, and that component is removed from the DOM, all the tasks that are running at that time are immediately canceled. So it automatically cancels all of the tasks. But as far as continuously running things, I haven't seen it done, but it's probably possible. But you can also use Ember Run to do it as well.
You can use an Ember Run later to schedule the task.
That's what it does right now. Is it does an Ember Run. Actually, not run later. It's an Ember Run to do something on the line queue. That was the other question with this: is this interact? I assume this is connected to the run loop somehow.
I'm not certain. I think it probably is though.
It's within the run loop, and we actually have a timer. Heather and I just wrote this recently. We have a timer that, so somebody on our app is doing a certain number of tasks, and we show like a performance metric, and we increment a timer every minute. So we schedule a concurrency task every minute yield a minute, and then the task itself schedules another task of itself.
Okay.
So it's
Nice.
it sort of
Oh, okay.
schedules
See,
itself.
that's how you
But the
do
nice
it.
part is, anytime you've ever seen an exception because you're calling set on a destroyed object, you want to bring it because it will just go away when the component goes away.
Gotcha.
Cool. Yeah, it's really handy.
Very nice.
Okay, so that's that. And the last one is Ember Exam. And so basically what Ember Exam is a drop-in replacement for the default Ember test command. And what it allows you to do is run your tests in a random order or in parallel. So one of the good things that this is used for is determining test interdependencies. So if you run them in a random order and some of your tests are dependent on the other, then they might fail when they wouldn't have failed otherwise with a regular test command. And the other thing that it lets you do is run your tests in parallel so you can run them faster. The unfortunate thing about Ember Exam, as I found out when trying to apply it to Ghost, is that it only works with QUnit. Because Mocha at present does not support randomization of tests. However, there is a PR in the works for Mocha randomization. So at that point, once that happens and gets merged in, I may try and fork this and make it work for Mocha, but at present it only works for QUnit. So, yeah.
And that's because the guy who wrote this works for LinkedIn and is a core contributor to QU.
Makes sense. That is everything I had. Does anybody have any questions?
Did you guys grab any metrics, like splitting out code mirror and other things? Any even just like qualitative metrics of how much time you guys ended up saving by separating out those assets?
I'm not sure, but all told, we ended up shrinking our minified vendor.js by 0.5 meg. So I'm sure it's somewhat significant. We actually just released the new version with all of those improvements and a ton of others today. So as far as speed goes, I think that will be determined at some point. But our eventual goal is to get rid of jQuery UI altogether, as there's only one tiny piece in the entire app that uses it. But that's for the future. It's not possible at the moment. But yeah. Any questions?
Are all three of the things you mentioned, is this stuff all come up with Ghost? Is that what you're talking about, or is it multiple?
Yeah. Yeah, they've specifically come up with Ghost. I've used them in other projects too recently, but these are mainly as a result of optimization work in Ghost. So.
Other questions for Austin? Go once. Go twice. Go Austin. All right, homies, thank you so much for coming. I promise that